Hi. Good day. I'm live. Yippee! So I just wanted to do a short little stream today to announce that I will not be streaming today. I'm going to help people move, as I mentioned in the last stream. Yeah, so I'm not actually here right now. This is a pre-recorded message. Yeah, April Fools. I don't know. I wanted to do a funny joke, but I am distant from people and don't know how to do funny jokes. But I bet you all feel pretty foolish right now. Ha ha ha. I say to all 0 viewers. But if you do watch this and it's still April Fools, you should go search Bing in Google. And that way Bing will be trending on Google, and that will be a funny joke. Yes, it will be a real great and hilarious time. Anyway, I hope everybody that watches this has been doing good in the quarantine times. Yeah. Anyways, nobody's here to ask questions or make conversation, so I'm just gonna keep mentioning how no one's here. But we'll just start. Why don't we? And people can catch up as they get here and use the replay feature of YouTube. Maybe I misled people with saying, I don't know if I'm gonna do it today. But here we are doing it. Whoops. Yes. So, a little summary of the last chapter. We basically found out that the faceless old woman's father was a smuggler, and she joined into the smuggling business, and then we learned about the Duke's own, and then her father got attacked by his employees, and then yes, she came to the rescue, and they had to find a new group of smugglers to help them out. Yes, and she just kept getting more and more involved with her father's business. So, picking up in chapter 5 of An Estate by the Sea. At age 13, I started to talk more openly about my future. I wanted to join my father's business, to accept it as my legacy, and, when he grew too old, to inherit his place in the business. My father was adamantly against it. He had given in on teaching me to protect myself and to understand the intricacies of his business so there would be no secrets interrupting our family closeness. But he wanted me to use the wealth he gained to find my way in the world of the righteous and law-abiding. Your mother and I dreamed such dreams for you, he said, and none of them involved you becoming a smuggler or a fighter. What could I do in the outside world? I asked. Use whatever wealth we have to pretend at nobility? Drift through the world in a cloud of servants and days of leisure until the family money runs out and it all starts over again? Marry some wealthy heir, combine our fortunes, and spend my days serving him? There is no job in the world of the righteous for a girl. But here, among these so-called criminals, I could lead. He shook his head, unable to argue with me, but also unyielding in his insistence that I not enter the business. Edmund, when he was around for these arguments, would tussle my hair in a patronizing manner and would make me furious if it came from anyone else, but from him carried only affection. I think she'd make a great smuggler, better than a couple of bumbling fools like us. Stay out of this, Edmund, my father said, uncharacteristically cold. She is my daughter, not yours. Edmund shrugged, a big clown-like shrug, but I think the word stung him. This was one of only two subjects that he and Edmund diverged on, the other being the perennial argument about joining forces with the Duke's own. It will only get more dangerous for us, Edmund would say. Royal forces are always there, are, are aware there is something fishy about this stretch of coast. We could be caught. And then there is the Order of the Labyrinth. Their ships are sighted more and more often these days. We need protection. The Duke's own can give us that, and we can make so much more with their distribution. My legacy will not go in hand with any band of murderers and slavers, my father would say. He would embrace Edmund, a sign that he wished to drop these disputes for the time being. Edmund, please let me think about my family's future. But there was little future left. The Order of the Labyrinth was becoming more and more a worry, not only for my father, but for anyone who lived or sailed upon the Mediterranean. Their ships, stacked high with crates, and bearing a black flag with the white sigil of a labyrinth, seemed to be everywhere. No one knew their purpose, who ran their organization, or what they wanted. What was known for sure is that they accepted no approach of their ships, and would viciously attack any other vessels that came too close. The various kingdoms and empires sent military craft after them, but no one could catch them. Their ships were fast, and their captains appeared to know the waters better than anyone. There had been no sign of any of their ships arriving at any port, and so the rumor was that there were islands throughout the sea, seemingly deserted, that actually held hidden anchorages for the Order. No one understood what or who the Order of the Labyrinth were. There were rumors as large as legends, but the stories were so exciting and terrifying that the general assumption was that they must be at least somewhat true. Some said the Order only attacked at sea, late at night. They would use arrows to silently kill the lookouts, and then sneak aboard the victim's ship, slitting each sailor's throat and throwing the bodies overboard. They would carefully clean up all of the blood, and then abandon the empty ship entirely. The pristine ghost ship left as a warning for others of their presence. Some said the Order employed mystics who held the power of flight and the ability to reach into a man's heart and stop it by simply concentrating from as much as 10 miles away. Some said the Order had been in the Mediterranean as long as humans had. Others said the Order had to have been there even longer than that, and that the first humans to reach Europe had found tall stone buildings already there, each carved with the emblem of a labyrinth. Those same people said that the buildings had no doors and no windows, and yet hooded members of the labyrinth still came and went, through means no one understood. Of course, others said that the Order was simply bandits like any other, and the hoods and emblems were only a show to keep their victims disoriented and easily controlled. In any case, the mysterious aura of the Order was enough to make any man scared. Any ship bearing the black flag and white labyrinth was given a wide swath upon the sea. It was universally agreed the Order could be anywhere at any time, and if they wanted what you had, whether it be wealth or life, they could take it from you. All of this made my father nervous. He understood bandits and smugglers, the flow of goods, the motive of wealth. These were known quantities. He didn't know what to do with secret societies, with ships that could not even be sailed past safely, and these ships were seen more often near our shore. Whatever the order of the labyrinth was, they were expanding into our region, and my father felt this could only mean trouble ahead. It was around this time that I, one evening, went out in the field behind the house to practice throwing my knife into the trunk of an old olive tree that had long since given up bearing fruit. Its bark was a patchwork of scars from my many previous sessions, and the scars had tended to group together closer and closer as my throwing became more precise. I could now easily land a knife within inches of where I had thrown it last, but I would not stop my practice until the blade landed every time and the notch left by the first throw. If I was to run a smuggling trade, and I was determined to do so, then I must be the best at every imaginable criminal feat. For crews of men to respect a woman as their leader, she must not just be their equal, but many times better, and I would not rest until I had achieved that. As I threw, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there, quite close in the gathering darkness, was a man who was hunched stiffly, and I recognized him as the figure I had seen twice before through my life, always indistinct and distant. Now he was quite close, less than 20 feet, although he had his back turned, and in the dim of the gloaming it was difficult to pick out any detail about him. I quickly retrieved my knife and held it at the ready, but he made no move nor any sound. He only stood with his strange posture and distorted mouth as the basic functionings of his body had failed. I grew afraid, and betraying an imagined self full of bravery and strength. I took my knife and ran inside, and I checked again out of a window. The man was gone. Hello, Hannah! Welcome, welcome. I don't know if you're gonna jump back or if you want a quick summary. But basically, she's got feminist determination to become a leader of the bandits. And her father doesn't want her to, but Edmund's fine with it. And the Order of the Labyrinth is becoming more and more present in their area of the sea. Yes, that's all, I think. And she saw the shambling man again. Yes, pretty short chapter. Chapter 6. Here is what a wet dog smells like. A wet dog smells like everywhere the dog has been. Grass and leaves and dirt and stones, mud and rainwater and smoke and garbage. Like everything the dog has done. It smells like saliva and adrenaline, like the furious joy of hunting smaller animals and the cringing confusion of being threatened by larger animals, or loud sounds, or a passing storm. A little like ripe fruit, a little like shit, of course, but a little like flowers. A lot of funk, but a little sweet, like food on the final moments before going bad. Like a compost pile when it has moved past the initial rot and starts with a real alchemy in soil. Like grapes a little. A wet dog smells exactly of our idea of what a wet dog smells like. The comfort in complete comprehension. There is no fear in understanding. It is the smell of something we love. A smell we put up with because we love them. All loves are negotiations. We tolerate so that we may rejoice. The smell of a wet dog is part of that bargain. That is what a wet dog smells like. When I was 14 years old, Edmund arrived late one evening to our house. This was not unusual, obviously, but his was a careful, tended-to schedule, and we had not expected to see him for some months more. He had never arrived early before, and my father looked deeply concerned. Edmund, for his part, was pale and had difficulty finding the words to express his reason for coming. I heated water for him, and my father fixed a simple meal of bread and cheese. "What is it, Edmund?" asked my father. "What trouble befalls us?" "Trouble, yes," he said. "Great trouble. Oh, my friend, I don't know if we will make it through this one." My father and I hunched in close to him. "The Order of the Labyrinth," Edmund whispered. "I am hearing from all over Europe, from every criminal connection I have, that the Order is looking to take over all smuggling in the civilized world. They have been gradually eradicating smaller operations by brutal and inhuman means. The Noble Steed, a ship we conducted business with last summer, was discovered seemingly abandoned in waters frequented by the Order. When bandits boarded the ships, they found the bodies of the Steed's crew burned to ash. I have it on several of my sources' accounts that we are the next target. The Order of the Labyrinth is coming for us, and they will destroy us." I reeled with the news. My father took it even worse than me, and I clutched at my arm. "Should we shut down our smuggling operations?" my father asked. "Perhaps restart them when the threat is past." "They already know who we are," Edmund snapped. "Their attack on the Steed was a warning to us. It is too late to hide." "What can we do?" my father asked. "You know what we can do," Edmund said. "We have bickered about it before, old friend, and now it is an existential necessity. We must join forces with the Duke's Own. By ourselves, we are powerless, but a grand force like that can provide countless fierce men to protect." "The Duke's Own," my father repeated, and spat on the floor. "Please, Papa," I said, "they can help." "They are cruel and soulless men. They make their wealth off slavery and blood, and I will not accept that coin, even to save myself. We cannot mix their unspeakable crimes with our family's legacy." For the first time, Edmund looked angry. "Then we are lost." My father shook his head. "No, there is another way. I have a plan." Hello! Um, at some point in our lives, we eat an apple for the last time. We smell coffee for the last time. We use a toilet for the last time, wash ourselves for the last time, get our last haircut. On a grand scale, very few of us are aware, as we have an experience, if it will be the last time we have that experience. Big quarantine mood. Last time I went to like a store, I wasn't like, "Oh, this will be my last time." I was like, "Man, I sure do love going to stores." And then everything changed when the Fire Nation released COVID-19. That same week that Edmund arrived, Albert came around, and we went swimming in the cove. I was slightly embarrassed to strip down even a few heavier items of my clothes in order to go swimming as we always had done. Albert had grown up and was now much taller than me. He had the first faint shadows of a beard, but had not yet understood this to mean that he might need to start shaving. And in the quiet times between our games, I had noticed a new tension between us. There was a crackling energy that existed in the silences between our joking words, and neither of us knew what to do with this energy. We were just old enough to feel the first inkling of passion, but far too young to recognize it, not even in ourselves, let alone the signs of it in others. So the afternoon I spent with Albert was halting and awkward. both of us a little shy for reasons we did not understand. But eventually we found the older rhythm to our days. We no longer played hide and seek or other childish games. We wrestled and raced and ate cherries on our backs in the grass, and we giggled over private jokes that I cannot recall, although I have spent countless years trying. Then the sun was going down, and Albert had returned to the family that I still knew nothing about, and I went back to my house, in which the tension was fierce. Edmund and my father were leaned over a table, mumbling through the details of the plan. As soon as I walked in the door, I felt the stress of our situation return, and I looked forward to the next time I got to spend a carefree afternoon with Albert. But there is a last time for everything we do in this life. And like anyone unlucky enough to be born into this world, I had just been carefree and young for the last time without knowing. Chapter 7 of An Estate by the Sea. I solved your apple puzzle. Have you seen that video? It's one of those guys from like BuzzFeed, the BuzzFeed ghost thing, where he's like the guy is talking about his manager at like Abercrombie and Fitch or something, and he's like, yeah, one day I was eating an apple, and she was like, what does that taste like? And he was like, an apple? She was like, huh, never had one. Later that day, she was arrested, or something like that. It was a crazy time. Yes, unless you don't ever eat an apple. Apples are good. Apples are important. I love apples. I haven't had an apple. No, I have. I have had an apple recently. I haven't had a Granny Smith apple for a while. And Granny Smith apples are my favorite, which is apparently controversial. But yes. Yes, everyone agrees that red delicious apples are horrible. I've never met a person. I have never met a person that was like, oh, red delicious apples? I love those. Yeah. A lot of people also like Honeycrisp. I was also listening to a podcast recently about a new species of apple, a new variety. I don't think species is the right word. A new variety of apple that got released, and they were trying to make a big deal about it. And it's called the Cosmic Crisp. And I really want to try one, but I've never seen one in like a grocery store or anything. But it's like part Honeycrisp and part something else. And it's supposed to like look like stars a little bit on the skin, which is why it's called the Cosmic Crisp. Anyways, fun apple facts during the Faceless Old Woman reading. All right. Chapter 7 of An Estate by the Sea. My father's plan was uncharacteristically violent, but he was willing to do what had to be done. Quitting smuggling would not save him, and my father refused to join the Duke's own because he did not want his family name tied to their ruthlessness and violence. More than death, my father feared his only daughter used as collateral against him, or worse, herself forced into a life of banditry and murder. So he had his plan. A fake shipment, he said. Here, a few miles down the coast, a cove very similar to ours, and next to dense, wooded land. Almost as good a place to bring ashore goods as our own. We stage a smuggling operation there and allow the order to see us set it up. Won't they be suspicious that we have moved our receiving port? Edmund asked. Yes, but we will assuage that suspicion on two fronts. Firstly, we will pay off one of the smaller royal boats whose crew we are friendly with to loiter in the waters near our cove, providing a pretext for the move. And secondly, we will move all our operations there starting now. Once they see that this has become a regular place for us, they will accept it as the new status quo. Then, he continued, we will hide a full regiment of mercenaries in the shipment. When the order of the labyrinth comes, our hired men will spring out and strike back mercilessly. The order of the labyrinth has many ships, said Edmund. Even if our attack succeeds, they will be back with more soon. Their interest is secrecy, said my father. And that secrecy is served better by picking on weaker operations first, rather than waging all-out war with the powerful. Otherwise, it would be common knowledge even to the armies of the kingdoms and empires that this order has become a warring state and must be crushed. So, it is in our interest to establish a tone of difficulty. We strike first, and we strike with overwhelming brutality. When they understand that to approach us is to invite fierce and visible violence, they will move on to easier, smaller targets. Edmund did not speak for several moments. Then, you believe this will work? Yes. It's risky, Edmund said. You are dead set against joining the Duke's own? It will never be an option. Okay, conceded Edmund after contemplative silence. I will go about arranging the decoy royal patrol and the mercenaries right away. Good. We keep a lookout at all times above this new location, and we board the mercenaries nearby. When we see the ship coming, we set up the fake shipment and prepare for their arrival. Edmund shook his head thoughtfully. I hope you realize the stakes here. If we fail or falter at all, they will crash us. They will crush us if we do nothing as well, said my father. He looked at me, and the sight of his daughter seemed to harden his resolve. I don't know if we'll succeed, but I know that we must try. Shrugging and finding only a small part of his usual laughter, Edmund raised his glass. Here's to our attempt. But I must help, I said, or more likely I whined it. I hated that tone in my voice, but I couldn't help the rising feelings of helplessness and fury. This is my family, too. This is what keeps both of us fed. You must let me help. My father raised an eyebrow, sighed, and motioned me to sit next to him. It had been some days, and smuggling operations had been transferred for the moment to the new spot miles down the shore. From our cliffs, I could just see the ships come and go from that new cove, but it was all so frustratingly distant. I have been trying to teach you what it is to live a life of crime, he said, and much of that is understanding and managing risk. Those who rush blindly in are the first to fall or get caught, or otherwise come up against misfortune. You must choose wisely when you put yourself in danger. One miscalculation could be the end of it all. But inaction could also be the end, I said. True, but we are acting. Edmund is managing the operation. Our mercenaries are in place. All that can be done is being done. Nothing about either of us being there or not being there would change how this will turn out. The only thing it could change is the length of our lives. Still, I could not be convinced. And what I felt was shame. I felt that my father was a coward and that he was forcing me also to be a coward, while others did the brave work of preserving our lives for us. My father, seeing this resentment in my eyes, led me to the window, from which we could see where my mother was buried. A view neither of us ever acknowledged or talked about. But this time he gestured towards her. I have a responsibility, he said. and my responsibility isn't to be the most wealthy or cunning or brave. It isn't to conquer the world. It's to see that you flourish, not as a criminal, nor as someone indebted for her life to criminals, but as a good woman. That is what I owe your mother, and what I owe you, and what I owe myself. Maybe you don't understand this now. Maybe you never will, and you will resent me forever for my caution. But none of those things will change the truth of my debt. He turned me away from the window. Now, he said, what should I make for dinner? Of course, that night I went, quietly out of my bedroom, and quietly through the house, and quietly out the door, and then, abandoning the quiet, tearing through the grass towards the shore, cliffs, and the ambush point ahead. It would happen soon, perhaps that night, and I needed to be there. It's not that I didn't understand my father's warning, it's that despite my understanding, my faith in what was right would not let me do otherwise. The night was warm, summer peering over the horizon of spring, bright too, a full moon turning in the nighttime into a slightly faded day. I could see the coast for a mile ahead of me, and the white caps of the waves breaking against it. If I had thought about it, I would have realized what a strange night that would have been for the Order of the Labyrinth to attack, when the cover of darkness wasn't dark. But I was not thinking. I was believing. I believed in my father and his righteousness. I believed in Edmund and his ability. I believed that our plan was foolproof. I believed in myself and my cunning, and most of all, I believed that my time had come. Too long I had been a child, hiding behind the work of my father. It was time for my name to be known, for my face to be remembered. I would be my own person in this world of smugglers and thieves, and they would know who I was. All of this went through my head as I, a child still, ran barefoot through the night until I arrived, panting at the shoreline, where Edmund stood, hands on hips, waiting to see if tonight was the night he would face attack. He turned at my approach, his face passing through confusion and shock and worry. What are you thinking? He said. You must get home at once. I was already speaking, already pleading my case. My legacy too. And when I'm old and looking back, do I want to have been hiding in my bedroom? It's time for me to take responsibility. It's time for me to help. You think so too. You said it so. And I'm just doing what you said. But also I'm doing what I chose to do. Because that's what it means to be grown up. And I am grown up. And I can help. I have sharper eyes than all the rest of you. I'll be able to see them coming from farther away. Please let me stay, Uncle Edmund. Please. It all sounded so much more dignified and eloquent in my head. Within me was a great general surveying her troops and speaking stirring words, and it made me cringe to open my mouth and hear a child whining for approval. But Edmund heard the noble foundation under my mewing words, and he nodded thoughtfully, or more likely, he looked back at the night-shrouded coast, and thought through the calculus of sending a child back on her own versus keeping her somewhere safe nearby. Okay, he said, you can stay. He pointed up at a cliff well out of the way, but up there. Keep an eye out and shout the moment you see ships. I did not understand, or chose not to understand, but the rationale of keeping me out of I did not understand, or chose not to understand, the rationale of keeping me out of harm's way. But I nodded sternly, a soldier on a mission, and I ran grateful and ashamed of my gratitude up to the cliff. The night would have been the kind of quiet, beautiful night that I liked to watch from the window of my bedroom, the hiss of waves and the wind through the trees harmonizing, and the world turned by the bright moon into a softer, bluer version of itself, permeated with the smell of night blooming flowers. But now there was a sense of threat and danger under all of the beauty, and it felt like the ocean itself was pounding as hard as my own heart. I strained my eyes, watching the seas, determined that if I was relegated to the cliff, then I would certainly be the first one to see the oncoming ships. And it would be those few extra minutes of extra advance notice my young eyes provided that would make all of the difference in setting up our ambush. The line between success and failure would be drawn by my decision to come out that night. If another lookout saw the ships before me, then it was true that I was only a nuisance, an extra concern for Edmund on a night when he already had more than enough. But try as I might, I could see no ships at all on the calm sea. The men sat around the fire on the beach, laughing and chatting. Edmund stood apart from them, staring at nothing in particular with his arms crossed, frowning. He occasionally looked up at the moon, tracking the progress of the night. He was more worried than I expected him to be, and it occurred to me that perhaps I had underestimated just how dangerous this position was. Perhaps I should return to my bed. But no, I was not a coward, and if I wanted to be counted in this world, then I needed the courage to stand up and be counted. Hours passed. I could feel myself start to waver into sleep. There were no ships coming that night. Perhaps the ships would never come. Perhaps they had found a more worthy target, and we could go back to our usual business, and years later think back and laugh about this week where we all became so worried about a great attack that never came. This thought made me happy, and I smiled deeply. Then I shook my head and stood to wake up my body. Now is not the time to fantasize about what could happen. Now was the time to focus on what was happening. I concentrated harder on searching the sea, hoping that this would keep me awake. And it was in this sweep for my vantage that I happened to turn back in the direction of our estate, and cried out. I cried out, not anything as useful as words, but the strangled grunting sound of someone who had been unexpectedly struck at night. Where the estate was, a thick black column of smoke rose into the bright night sky. I think we'll end there today. Sorry, I always end at the most cliffhangering moments. But it's been about the normal time for a reading. So we're gonna stop there. Hannah says, a ton of apples here that we don't get in the States. That's interesting, because when I was in France, it was all the same apples. Like there wasn't any apple that I had never seen before. Cox Orange Pippin, which is the most British apple name. Cox Orange Pippin does sound very British. Big mood. You should have thought about that before you got into crime, Dad. Yeah, it is kind of interesting that he is very insistent on doing crime, instead of like selling the estate and living like a more humble lifestyle, or like getting some sort of other job. What happened to that kid? Which kid? That kid. What happened to that kid? I don't know what kid you're talking about. That something probably happened. The girl's friend. He just went back to his house. And then they were like, that's the last time I ever saw him. Bye. Yeah. Anyways, I don't know. I think it's interesting because her father is always like, no crime, no killing. When he obviously seems very fine with killing. So, interesting. If I were to perform a psychoanalysis, I would say he wants to do crime, but he also feels bad about it. So he's trying to find these certain parameters of crime that he can do, which I think is interesting. Because I feel like, yeah, he's literally like preparing to kill people instead of joining a group of killers. Yeah. Maybe Albert will be back. Who knows? I don't know. This is like the most Night Vale story I've ever read. Like the other two novels are nothing like this. So it is sort of strange to read this. It definitely feels like they've like the authors have sort of picked out another voice to try on. Because like the first chapter that was the faceless old woman was like very Night Vale, very Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner, but now it's like something that I haven't ever really seen them do before, which is interesting. So I don't know if they're going to talk more about Albert or if he was just there to be there, which some characters are. They don't have like an important part in the plot necessarily. Because, I mean, if I'm honest, I feel like in general, Night Vale is pretty plot light. And it just fills in with a lot of these like weird descriptions and like weird little tidbits and things. And the plot is in general like pretty slow and unimportant. And here they're kind of stripping back away a lot of that. That extra like fluff, weird fluff stuff. So I'm curious to see how exactly all of that works out. But I think it is kind of interesting because it feels much more like based on the characters and more character centric. But we honestly don't know that much about the characters for how long the story has gone on. Yeah. Those are my thoughts. Talk about your thoughts. Tell me how you're doing in the like however long it is before this actually ends. AKA talk faster. I'll end it before you say anything. Albert is Craig's great-great-great-granddad? What? That would be crazy. Yeah, everybody has an important place in my heart so far. I really do like all the characters. I really love Albert. I really love Edmund. I'm very intrigued by this like shambling man that like keeps appearing and they keep bringing him up. It feels like they keep like bringing things up. That's part of what I think is really different about this book is usually in Night Vale they keep bringing things up and it works really well because it's Night Vale and everything is so poetic and they find really wild ways of like bringing stuff back up. Whereas with this, it's less randomized, I guess. So they just keep bringing up like, oh, this sort of shambling man, the Order of the Labyrinth, the Duke's Own, and there's like all these things, and they keep trying to like raise the suspense. But to me, it always feels like they're kind of just saying the same thing. I'm being overly critical, as I always am with everything. Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see how things change with like the different writing style. But I think I am still really enjoying the book. I love the like sort of fairy tale Renaissance period Europe feel of it. And I'm very curious to see, I guess, sort of how it transitions back into Very, Very Night Vale, as it was at the beginning of the book, and as I'm assuming it will. Yeah. Decent fashion. Yeah, it is kind of like Treasure Island or Return of the Obra Dinn. I haven't played Return of the Obra Dinn yet. I should do that sometime. Yes, I'm very curious to see where this goes. We are that far through the book, so not super far. There's still a good chunk. I don't know if I should start reading longer when I read. I don't know, because I feel like that's harder to keep up at a regular pace. But also, I think about this book constantly when I'm not reading it. Anyways, we are at 47 minutes, which is the longest stream I've ever done. But they just keep getting longer and longer. I'm a wiggly boy. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Anyways, I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. And have fun listening to me type. And yes, peace signs out. I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. Today is my last day in quarantine, so I get to go in the rest of my house. So maybe we'll find fun new places to film rather than my room or the bathroom as we are in today. Signing off and seeing you in entirely new locations tomorrow. I hope you guys have a good one. Bye!